stop me crying, baby, it'll be alright. You told me that the end is near.
They conquered the world faster than any other group of the 21st century. 50 million albums sold, hundreds of millions of dollars in the bank, billions of views on YouTube, and stadiums selling out in minutes. 5 ordinary boys brought together on The X Factor became global legends and a symbol of an entire generation.
It's great just to sit back and just watch it back and kind of remember and like relive those moments. It's nice.
Their songs played in headphones during first loves helped people smile when everything seemed to be falling apart and gave hope that tomorrow would be better. But behind the glittering facade was a very different reality. Secret conflicts, backstage betrayals, battles over money, and endless exhaustion no fan was ever told about. Zayn didn't leave just because of pressure. Divisions had already begun inside the group, and discussions of a breakup were happening long before the official announcement. Managers were making millions, while the boys themselves were losing their strength, their friendship, and their faith in one another. And perhaps that is why their story hurts so much. Because One Direction were never just musicians. They became part of our youth. And with their breakup, a part of us disappeared too. In 2010, 5 ordinary teenagers walked onto the X Factor stage, never suspecting that within months they would become a global sensation. They didn't win the show, but they became something greater than winners. One Direction turned into a phenomenon capable of filling stadiums and making millions. It seemed they had everything: fame, the love of fans, and a future without limits. But behind the glossy packaging was another story. Contracts stripped them of freedom. Producers controlled their every step, and resentment and jealousy began to fester inside the group. Some already dreamed of leaving, but no one dared say it aloud. 5 best friends in public and 5 strangers backstage. That was the moment the story of the end began, though fans had no idea. When the first wave of fame began to fade, it became clear. Inside One Direction, there was no unity like the fans saw on stage. Endless tours, constant pressure from management, and a schedule without breaks turned their dream into a prison. Cameras captured their smiles, but backstage arguments grew louder and more frequent. Zayn withdrew further into himself, saying he didn't feel like part of the band. Harry dreamed of a solo career and wanted to experiment with music, but was forced into the role of the perfect idol. Liam complained of burnout. Niall tried to smooth over the tension, and Louis felt stuck in the shadows. It was a ticking time bomb. Fans kept believing in the fairy tale, but the truth was that the boys were already drifting apart. They themselves felt it first, and inside One Direction grew the thought that sooner or later, one of them would walk away. In March 2015, the moment came something fans feared, but inside, the group had seemed inevitable. Zayn Malik announced he was leaving One Direction. The official explanation was gentle stress and a desire to live a normal life. But behind the scenes, it was darker. Zayn had long felt like an outsider. He didn't connect with the group's style. His ideas were ignored, and his personal struggles deepened the tension. His departure was a shock to millions worldwide. Girls cried outside schools and studios. Hashtags with his name flooded Twitter. But the real drama was unfolding inside the band. Harry saw it as betrayal. Liam tried to hold things together. Niall spoke about hope for the future. And Louis couldn't hide his anger. Zayn's exit wasn't just a blow. It was the signal that One Direction could never return to what they had been. From that moment, everything changed. Trust was shattered, and the remaining 4 began playing roles that no longer reflected how they truly felt. To the fans, they were still the best band in the world, but inside the countdown had already begun. After Zayn's departure in March 2015, the remaining 4 quickly reassured fans that One Direction would continue. In July, they released Drag Me Down, their first single without Zayn, and it shot to #1 in 90 countries. From the outside, it looked like triumph, but inside, things were different. According to insiders, tensions between Harry and Louis were particularly strong at the time. Even during tours, they had clashed over discipline. Louis accused Harry of distancing himself and acting too serious, while Harry saw Louis as careless and disruptive. Fans even created the Haler and Larry theories, rumors of romances that only added pressure, while the band grew tired of constant media speculation. Liam admitted in an Attitude interview that after Zayn left, he felt lost and that they had to piece the band back together. Niall said in podcasts that their lives were scheduled down to the minute and they had no chance to just live. By autumn 2015, the tension was obvious. During the On the Road Again tour, the boys increasingly attended events separately. Harry spent less and less time with the others, while Louis and Liam argued with management over future contracts. When the album Made in the AM dropped in November, its success masked the cracks only briefly. Behind the curtain, there were fierce disputes over profit distribution and creative control. Harry pushed for a more mature sound, while Louis fought to preserve the pop formula that guaranteed money. The arguments grew harsher. In December 2015, they announced a hiatus, but many journalists wrote bluntly, this was the end. Louis later admitted in an interview that at that moment he felt like the odd one out and feared his career would suffer the most after the breakup. Liam spoke of constant conflicts within the group, while Harry, immediately after the pause, began preparing his solo album, effectively closing the door on any reunion. Fans hoped it was temporary, but inside the band there was nothing left except exhaustion and resentment. When in January 2016, One Direction officially went on hiatus, everyone called it a break, but in reality, it was the beginning of a new era solo projects. And it was here that what fans had only suspected became clear: competition among the former bandmates. Zayn Malik didn't wait. By March 2016, he released Mind of Mine with the hit Pillow Talk. The song topped charts in both the US and the UK, making Zayn the first to prove he could succeed as a solo artist. But in interviews, he admitted he had never felt like a real musician in One Direction, and that their style didn't reflect who I was. These words stung the others, and fans noticed that his ties with the group were finally severed. Harry Styles chose a different path. He disappeared for a year, then returned in 2017 with his debut album Harrystyles and the soaring ballad Sign of the Times. Unlike Zayn, Harry didn't criticize the past. Instead, he carefully built a new image, a rock star and fashion icon. His solo tours sold out arenas. He starred in Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk, and it became clear that Harry was the true heir to One Direction's fame. Liam Payne bet on pop and collaborations. His 2017 single Strip That Down became a hit, but critics argued it relied too heavily on trends. Later, Liam openly admitted it was difficult to find himself without the group. Niall Horan surprised everyone. His album Flicker 2017, with hits like Slow Hands, showcased a softer acoustic sound and earned respect even from those who had never been One Direction fans. Niall became the dark horse, not considered a frontrunner, yet he quietly built a stable and respected career. Louis Tomlinson started last. His singles were inconsistent, and his first album Walls didn't arrive until 2020. Louis himself admitted he felt like the weakest in the band and feared he could never compete with Harry or Zayn. Yet he held on to a loyal fan base who refused to let him fade away. Despite the smiles for the cameras, rivalry was palpable. Album sales were compared, chart positions measured, tour numbers counted. Harry rose steadily into the ranks of global superstardom. Zayn exploded out of the gate, but soon fell into personal struggles. Niall carved out the space of a sincere, respected musician. Liam floundered between genres. Louis fought simply to keep his place in the industry. Fans kept hoping for a reunion, but the more successful Harry's solo career became, the clearer it was. One Direction would never return to the peak where they once stood together. From the moment of the breakup, fans spent every year waiting for one thing: the announcement of a reunion. Hashtags like onedirection regularly trended on Twitter, especially on anniversaries. But behind the scenes, it was never that simple. In 2017, Harry was asked in an interview about the chances of a comeback. His answer was cautious, never say never, but he immediately added that he was happy focusing on his solo career. That same year, Liam admitted there was a lot of tension between them and that Zayn doesn't even keep in touch with the rest. His words only fueled the fire. Zayn, meanwhile, was blunt. He said more than once that he saw no reason to return. In a Vogue interview, he confessed that with the others, there was no friendship and that he never felt comfortable in the band for even a day. Such raw admissions shattered any illusion that One Direction might someday reunite. In 2020, for the band's 10-year anniversary, fans were certain there would be a surprise. Everyone expected a joint performance, or at least an online event, but nothing happened. Harry, Niall, Liam, and Louis posted on social media. Zayn didn't even mention the date. For fans, it was the most painful confirmation. The story was over. Conflict surfaced again later. In 2022, Liam gave an interview claiming a lot of things in the band were done wrong and that not everyone was friends. Fans were outraged, while Louis responded that he was hurt when someone tried to drag down their past. Every such statement revealed the truth. Behind the rare polite words and public smiles were genuine wounds. And the more time passed, the clearer it became a One Direction reunion lived only in fan dreams. From the outside, One Direction had always looked like a fairy tale about friendship and music. But inside, it was an enormous industry with billions in revenue. According to Forbes, by 2014, the group was already earning more than $130 million a year, making them the most profitable boy band in history. Sponsorships, merchandise, global tours, all brought staggering sums. But money became one of the main sources of tension. Rumors swirled that psycho managers and producers dictated terms that gave the boys far less control than fans imagined. Decisions were often made without them, and dissatisfaction grew. Zayn said he felt like a slave to the industry, while Harry insisted the group should take control of their own music. Financial inequality also played a role. Officially, the boys earned the same fees, but media attention and brand deals favored Harry, fueling hidden jealousy. Louis later admitted he felt the least important and feared he would always remain in the shadows. After the split, the struggle for contracts continued. Harry signed a multi-million-dollar deal with Columbia Records. Niall inked with Capitol. Zayn joined RCA Records. Liam and Louis took longer to find labels and admitted the business weighed on them much more heavily than they had expected. Many insiders claimed the 2016 hiatus was not just about exhaustion. Behind the scenes, there were bitter disputes about money, about the psycho contract, and about who received the biggest share of tour profits. To fans, One Direction were legends, but to the labels, they were always a money-making machine. And in the end, that very machine crushed what had begun as the simple dream of 5 friends who only wanted to sing. Harry Styles emerged as the ultimate winner. His debut album, Harry Styles, 2017, shot straight to no one in both the US and the UK. The soaring ballad, Sign of the Times, became a hit and cemented his image as a new rock star. Harry signed a multi-million-dollar deal with Columbia Records, launched an acting career with Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk, and gradually transformed into a fashion icon. In 2021, his track Watermelon Sugar won a Grammy, while his stadium tours sold out within minutes. For many fans, it became undeniable. Harry had surpassed One Direction and built a career on a truly global scale. Zayn Malik started just as loud. His debut album Mind of Mine 2016 and the single Pillow Talk instantly topped the charts, making him the first member of One Direction to achieve such solo success. But after the rise came the fall. Struggles with mental health, canceled tours, a split with RCA Records, and public scandals. His relationship with Gigi Hadid often overshadowed his music, and slowly Zayn became the symbol of unfulfilled potential. Fans wrote, "He could have been the new Michael Jackson, but he lost it all." Niall Horan unexpectedly became one of the standouts. His album Flicker, 2017, with hits like Slow Hands and This Town, showed that he could write sincere, heartfelt music. Niall built a loyal fan base and earned critical respect. He may not have become a global superstar like Harry, but he created a steady career, toured the world, and avoided scandals. He became the quiet winner, proving everyone had underestimated him. Liam Payne faced the hardest road. His debut single Strip That Down 2017 was a success, but afterward his career stumbled. Critics dismissed his music as too trendy and lacking a unique voice. In interviews, Liam admitted to struggling with alcohol and depression. In 2021, he sparked controversy by saying he didn't always get along with the others and that there were serious conflicts in the band. Those words made it clear the friendship was gone. Louis Tomlinson searched for himself the longest. His first album, Walls, came only in 2020 and received mixed reviews. Louis openly confessed he had always felt like the weakest in One Direction, and after the breakup, he feared losing everything. His personal tragedies deepened the struggle. In 2016, his mother died, and in 2019, his sister passed away. Despite it all, Louis kept releasing music and built a fan base that saw him as the most genuine of them all. Yet commercially, his career never reached the heights of Harry's or Niall's. Fans constantly compared their fates. Harry, the global superstar; Niall, the steady musician; Zayn, the lost talent; Liam, the disappointment; Louis, the tragic figure. Their solo journeys cemented one truth: One Direction belonged to the past. If in 2016 fans still believed in a reunion, now it was clear each of them had chosen his own road, and those roads would never cross again. One Direction began as a story of dreams. 5 boys, randomly brought together on a TV show, becoming the biggest boy band of the 21st century. But they ended as a story about the price of fame, a price no one can pay without loss. In a single decade, the group gave the world hundreds of songs, millions of cherished memories, and became the symbol of an entire generation. But their breakup exposed what had always been hidden. Friendship and music had been sacrificed to money, management control, personal ambition, and the crushing weight of the industry. Fans still argue whether it could have been avoided. Some blame Zayn, others blame management, and some point to the boys themselves, too young, forced to grow up too quickly. But the truth is, the breakup was inevitable. Harry, Zayn, Niall, Louis, and Liam were simply too different, destined to drift apart. Today, Harry fills stadiums as a solo star. Niall builds a steady, respected career. Louis survives on the loyalty of his fans. Liam fights his inner demons. And Zayn remains the most controversial of them all. A man of immense talent with a broken destiny. They will never walk onto the same stage again, but they changed music forever and showed both how high you can soar and how painfully you can fall. One Direction were more than just a band. They were a phenomenon, a part of millions of lives. But behind their smiles was a price no one spoke of. And perhaps that is the greatest truth. Greatness almost always lives side by side with destruction. Remember how it all began. 5 young boys who had no idea what fame meant walked onto the stage of the X Factor just wanting to sing. They laughed, they joked. They leaned on each other, and no one could have imagined that soon they would have millions of fans and the whole world at their feet. But time is merciless. It turns friends into rivals, dreams into contracts, and smiles into masks for the public. One Direction gave millions of teenagers hope, joy, and the feeling that they were never alone. Their songs played through headphones when someone was hurting. Their concerts became the happiest days in their fans' lives. Their friendship seemed like a real fairy tale. But behind every legend lies sacrifice. They paid with their freedom, their happiness, their friendship. And maybe that is why their story resonates so painfully in people's hearts. Because it is not only a story about fame, it is a story about growing up, about how a dream can become a prison, and how even the closest bonds can break under the test of time. They will never again stand on stage together. But every time the opening chords of What Makes You Beautiful play, we return to that time when the world seemed simpler and five boys promised they would always be there. And the tears in our eyes are not from sadness, but from gratitude. Because One Direction will forever be a part of us.